Well, the Business and Trade Secretary, Kemi Badenoch, joins me now. Very good morning to you. Good to see you. So Britain is joining the CPTPP. Yes. Been practising that. Just how big a deal do you think this is?
It's a very big deal, and it's not about what's going to happen tomorrow. It's really a strategic play for the future. We in the government have had an Indo-Pacific tilt. You would have heard all about the integrated review, what we're going to be doing with our economy on security issues and so on. And basically, the crux of the matter is that global growth is going to be coming from this region. In just about 7 years, about 40% of the global middle class will be in the Indo-Pacific. And what we want to do is to be able to create new pathways so we can trade more freely, because that's where the business is going to be coming from.
And yet you talk about a business in the future, and yet, according to the government's own estimates, this deal will only add 0.08% onto the country's growth, and that's over around 10 years or so, and that's a lot less than the 4% hit we've had from Brexit, according to...
Yes, those figures aren't just the government's figures, they're my own department's figures, and I asked the exact same question, well, why are we doing this if this is just 0.08%? And then they gave the context of the figures. It was a scoping assessment done 2 years ago based on 2014 figures. It's sort of a rough draft of where you want to start from, but the thing I would want your viewers to understand is this is not to replace EU trade. It's in addition to EU trade. We have an EU FTA. Every day we're working to make it better, but we're also able to do more on the outside of the EU, and that's what this is about. So people should look at those projections in terms of buying a startup which is going to grow and become huge in the future. It's not about what it's making today, but about the potential, the synergies, and that's why it's really exciting.
But also, we do have trade deals with nearly all of these countries already, don't we? So how much difference can this make?
Because what's in them is different. So the bilateral trade deals are different from a multilateral trade deal. You create synergies. It's the first time we've joined a bloc like this in about 50 years. There is strength in numbers, and yes, we have, remember, we have a relationship with the EU already. We've got an FTA, so this is adding to that. But we don't have an FTA with all of those countries. But the key thing is that more countries are joining, and we've got in early. So again, it's about that potential and about changing things like tariff rules. We had free trade agreements with those countries, but now 99% of our exports are going to be tariff-free. We didn't have that with the previous trade deals.
But what is the risk that there could be imports that come in that go against some of our standards, our food standards, for example, or our ethical standards? OK, what about our ethical standards then?
So on things like food standards and ethical standards, the difference between this and being in the EU is that we make the rules and regulations on our standards. We have quotas which say what the amounts are, but people have to meet our standards, and that's what's good about it.
Well, so what about palm oil from Malaysia,
yes.
then, for example? Palm oil, obviously, is seen to be responsible for destroying habitats, being very bad for the environment. You're saying that there won't be lower tariffs on palm oil coming into this country?
There are. That's what happens. You have to make trade-offs. But we take in already just about 1%. I think it's actually slightly less than 1% of Malaysian palm oil exports. Moving the tariff from 2% to 0% is not what's going to cause deforestation. And actually, the standards which are set by this government, by the Department for the Environment, is what's going to dictate what comes into the country. But also, being in the trade bloc means that you're going to have more influence on sustainability. Palm oil is actually a great product. It's in so many of the things we use. This is not some illegal substance we're talking about. And actually, there are other crops in the EU that are causing deforestation that fit within EU rules. So we need to do what is right for our country and make the decisions which are going to be of benefit to the future and help to influence those things that we want to change. So I think it's still, overall, a very good thing.
What about farmers? They might be worried. They felt that the trade deal that was done by the government with Australia and New Zealand meant that they had to compete with under what they might see as ruinous conditions. So do they have to be worried about this deal as well?
No, not at all. I would say that I think that the concerns about the previous deals were overblown, but I took that feedback when I was going into the negotiations. I'm an MP for a rural constituency. I speak to farmers all the time, and I had them at the back of my mind when we were carrying out these negotiations. So, for instance, on things like beef and pork, what we're talking about is 5% of domestic consumption. that's not going to displace farmers in the UK. And a lot of that is already coming from other countries in the EU. So actually, it's more competition for EU countries. And at the end of the day, people don't have to buy what they don't want. If I'm negotiating a trade deal, I'm thinking about my farmers in my country and what I can do for them. We will only grow our agriculture in this country if we export. And we can't tell people we want to export our farm products, but we don't want any of theirs. That's not how trade works. It's for mutual benefit.
OK, I want to ask you, you're, as well as Business Secretary and Trade Secretary, you're also Minister for Women and Equalities. And a report has come out today looking into fire services in England, and it's found that staff, at a quarter of them, have reported alleged racist, homophobic and misogynistic behaviour in the past 5 years. What do you make of those findings?
It's terrible. It's extremely disappointing to hear. Obviously, there's no way that one can make excuses for that. I think it needs to be investigated. What is happening, what is causing the culture that is creating these outcomes in the fire service. But I would also ask people to look at things like the government's plan on strategy on race, for instance, Inclusive Britain. There are many recommendations that we have there for organisations in terms of looking at their work culture, and there's still work that we are doing, which hopefully we'll be able to use to help improve the working environment for places like the fire service. It is unacceptable that people should go into the workplace and have those sorts of experiences, and I will do everything I can within my power to be able to support the employees.
Yes, what will you do to try to help change the culture?
Well, specifically on race, because that's something that I have worked on, we've set out what can be done, and we still have some things in train which I'll be announcing probably when we come back from recess. It gives an update on the report. But more importantly, there are already laws that will be able to help tackle those issues. So there are court remedies, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, but more importantly, we need to understand why this is happening, what is happening with the culture, and we're very ready as a department to support the fire service. But without knowing the detail, I can't really comment much further than that.
The news broke last night that a grand jury in the States has voted to indict Donald Trump. He says he's the victim of a political witch hunt. Are you confident all the proper legal processes are being followed there?
I don't know enough about the US. I should hope so. They are a close country, and I think our closest ally. I think it's important that we just continue to maintain our working relationship with the US, and wherever they have a due process, looking to make sure that it is followed. We have to set an example to other countries. But to be honest, I don't know very much about Donald Trump or this specific case, and I will assume that, like any live court case, it's not something that we can comment on as the proceedings go on. But
and yet it's a big moment, isn't it? A former president, one who still has political ambitions. He'd love to return to be president. It's a big moment to see them criminally indicted.
It's huge. If what we're seeing is going to play out, it's absolutely huge. But I don't really like talking about Donald Trump, to be honest. I like talking about the UK and what we're doing here for British people.
OK, well, Kemi Badenoch, thanks very much indeed for coming in to chat to us about those issues. Thank you.